What is middle-out economics, and how does it differ from traditional models?
Middle-out economics is really a way to describe making sure the consumer, the demand is at the center of our economic thinking. Really kind of contrasts with supply-side economics. So middle-out economics really focuses on ensuring that middle-class folks and people trying to get into the middle class can consume, can create demand, can have a good life. That helps economic growth overall because when they have the ability to buy products, it stirs economic growth. It contrasts with supply-side economics, which is another model, which really focuses on ensuring that the theory is that when the wealthy do well, it trickles down to everyone else. And so it's sort of a trickle down versus bottom up approach. And I think most economists today believe that ensuring that we have strong demand, that middle class folks can earn a good living, which allows them to lead a good life, but also allows them to contribute to the economy, is a stronger growth model, a more stable growth model for the long term.
So a lot of the conversations that seem to take place about the on-demand economy, or whatever we want to call it, seem to be binary. On one side, you've got contractors. On the other side, you have employees. Is there an opportunity in the middle there?
There is. I mean, we have to just to step back for a moment. The United States has a unique position here because we run most of our benefits that protect people from economic risks through employment, and that's why it's such a on-off switch. So if you're an employee, you usually get healthcare benefits, some retirement benefits, unemployment insurance, and if you're an independent contractor, you get nothing. So we were trying to think through how to reimagine employment law for the 21st century so that there may be a third option, a third way forward in between these two, but that still keeps incentives for employers to keep employees where it makes sense, and also we want to have some ability for independent contractors. They do provide that ability to be an independent contractor does create some flexibility in the economic system. So, I don't think there's a lot of thinking in this space. We haven't figured out the right answer yet, but some option that allows people to have some benefits. And sometimes it might even be like a model like the ACA where the state offers health insurance through the Affordable Care Act. Someplace I do think business, government, and workers are going to have to kind of figure this out, come together so that they're all sharing some of the risk here, but also it doesn't just fall on workers.
How do you see the on-demand economy evolving in the short term over the next 2 years or so?
I think it is a growing area in the economy, and it's an area of vibrancy, and we need to be supportive of areas in which we're seeing economic growth. I am a big believer in that. At the same time, we want to ensure that the disruption that does take place and innovation that takes place because of that disruption isn't making some group of people just far worse off. So, I'm really interested in innovations that help both consumers and workers. Some of the talk we have is some of the disruption is really taking place on the employment side, makes it easier for consumers, but also displaces a lot of workers. And I do think we have to think about what that means for our economy writ large, because in an economy like ours, which is 70% consumption based, so most of what happens in our economy really is based on what consumers are doing. When fewer and fewer workers can get a living wage, that actually reduces demand and has negative effects on our economy. So we all have a stake in ensuring that jobs of tomorrow are producing kind of a middle class wage people can live on. And I think that's a big concern people have, and it's important that we have conferences and discussions to focus on it.
At what point do you anticipate that policy is going to start shaping the on-demand economy, or is that already happening?
I mean, there's policy at the edges, whether someone's an independent contractor or an employee is kind of a big determination for some firms. But I think at the end of the day, we talk about the on-demand economy, but that is still a small percentage of independent contractors, and we've had the rise of independent contractors for a very long time. And again, we have this sort of binary where employees have a lot of protections, independent contractors have none. So I think that is really, the rise of independent contractors is making a lot of people think about if they're just really supplanting workers or employees. It's making a lot of people think about how we approach employment law writ large, and how we approach having some of these economic risks allocated. How can we share of those risks so it's not just falling on families, because that's really what's driving a lot of anxiety out there. If you don't have any access to unemployment insurance, and you don't have any access to health care, and you're never going to have a pension, but you're working really hard and contributing to the economy, that's what makes people feel like, not to get hokey about it, but the American dream doesn't really work for that. And that's creating a fair amount of cynicism and anxiety that I think is really roiling the political process, which is, over the long term, we have to come up with some answers for.
Last question for you. What people or projects are you following these days?
Well, this area of work, what to do with the rise of independent contractors is really interesting. I mean, I follow a lot of what's happening in, the gig economy, as we like to call it. And, I'm most interested in companies that are disrupting, but creating, again, that win-win. So it's a disruption of an existing market, but that creates a much better product for consumers, but also tends to be good for workers. So there's some interesting new developments where tech companies or gig economy companies are thinking about the employment relationship and developing a strong relationship with workers, thinking of them as employees, because they think that actually makes them better employees, better workers, more highly productive, and better people to interface with customers. So those are the kinds of trends I'm looking at.
Great. Well, thank you for being with us.
Thank you. Great to be with you.